Are we live?
We are live. The internet is back. It was all this guy's fault once again.
It was, yeah. Hey, I was actually here early. Everyone out there needs to know. I was here. As soon as Simon gave me a link to join, I joined. I was 3 minutes early.
We were actually ready to go at 9:27, and then my internet decided to do the Aussie thing where it just goes away, and we don't know why. Anyway, today we have a lot of things to talk about. It's pretty cool. We restarted the podcast thinking, I don't know if we'll have things to talk about every week, and turns out because we spend a lot of time on the internet, a lot of things pop up. Especially this week, a lot of things popped up.
Yeah, it's been a busy one.
Yee.
Should we jump straight into the first one, the one that is the T-shirt that you're wearing today? Can you tell us a little bit about what's been going on in the world of Tailwind?
Yeah, so actually last week we had the episode on Wednesday, and the very next day I was saying, I've got my workshop on Friday, and then on Thursday between last episode and my workshop, Tailwind CSS announced not an official, but like they open source the progress of Tailwind version 4. So it's a really good framing, I guess, to open source the progress. It's like, hey, it's not something that's ready. Well, I mean, you can try to use in production. It's just CSS, I guess. But they were like, we're not releasing something finished. We're just open sourcing the progress to this point.
Simon, have you got the echo thing on again?
Ah, bloody hell. John loves me because it means he has to go and change the audio file before uploading.
Well, how about we do a scrap on that one, because I have to chop the start off anyway.
We're going to turn the stream off and then join back.
We don't need to join back the stream. We can just,
we
start
can stay
talking again, and it'll be fine. Thank you so much, Robin. I need to add, we've moved away from our checklists. We had our checklists to make sure that Simon doesn't... Is it still going? Is it still echoing?
No, I know what it is, and it has to be fixed.
It has to be fixed,
yeah.
Unless it's just me not wearing headphones.
No, it's me. It's the mix minus BS. And the fun thing is, I went back to our early episodes, and I was explaining this I was trying to be the authority in content creation, and I was like, you need to make sure that the mix minus thing is like, so you don't send the audio feedback. Anyway, yeah.
Well, thank you, Robin. Maybe we need to not jump straight into the episode so we can talk trash for a little bit longer, so that someone can tell us if there's an echo before we start recording.
Yeah,
hi Tom. Hi Robin.
Part of our routine, we ask everyone if there's an echo. No, there is. I'll do it after this show, I promise. Maybe there is.
People joining us. Sorry.
Yeah, there's an option to do it manually in the thing, so I don't have to forget to do this, and I will do that. Mix minus.
Okay. I'm now going to hassle you about it every single time.
Please. Please
forever.
Do.
In fact, I'm going to add it to my pre-flight. See, we don't have a pre-flight checklist anymore.
Yeah.
We got rid of all the tech checks, and now we have tech problems. Tom, Robin, thank you for joining us. If anyone in the chat wants to ask any questions throughout, then
please
chuck them in there, and we will bring them up on screen. And
I'm trying to find the comments Windows so I can bring them on screen. I don't know how things works anymore.
we took a week off the podcast, and now we've forgotten how everything works.
Well, you haven't. Looks like I have. You can
we were
see
fine after 14 months, but after 7 days, we're very rusty.
Well, now we're having the casual chat because we're gonna restart officially, so John doesn't have to do some audio treatments for my echo.
John.
Technically, it's your echo, so it looks like it's your fault. My mistake makes you sound bad, which is like it's terrible, but that's the way. Where is the comments? John, why did you choose me as a podcast partner?
Because you're an amazing podcast partner, and every single week we have this giant list of things we could talk about, and we end up picking off like 3 things because we just love talking to each other so much. It's just always such a lovely hangout and good chats.
So if you don't know, Robin is on the actual Tailwind CSS core team. We're setting the bar, the nav bar of quality of what we're going to talk about here. Yeah, good to see you, Aaron. Thank you for saving us once again. Robin
And
saved me many, many times.
thanks for joining First Impressions Conversion Rate Optimization. I love this. I love this name. I hope your first name is actually, what would it be? Ficro? Ficro? That would be very, very appropriate name for First Impressions Conversion Rate Optimization.
We
And
got
I
Peter
hate
in the house
tomatoes.
too. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's all happening.
I like tomatoes.
Slowly.
Well, I like tomatoes in moderation. Apparently, as a kid, I would like not eat anything that was tomato except for tomato sauce. Like even tomato soup was too tomatoey for me, but tomato sauce, all about it. Give me that sugar and vinegar.
Yeah, hide it with other stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so we might get to that point. Astro DB of it got added to the list of things that got shipped. There's Laravel 11, Astro DB, Astro Studio, Tailwind 4. I've seen the Devon Copilot plus. There's so many things, which makes it funny because we were not sure if we'd have topics to cover.
Yeah.
How about we
All
actually start?
Should we start? Let's do
Yeah.
it. Let's get into it.
Now that
All
we
right.
know.
Simon, we're going to start the podcast now.
Yes.
And we're going to start with our first topic, which is going to be Tailwind CSS. You are wearing the shirt. You are repping the brand. What's happened in Tailwind this week?
Let's pretend this would be champagne. It's actually sparkling water, but...
Oh, wow. That is quite a sound effect. Simon is ready to go.
It sounds like a cat. Like it. All right. Serious. Tailwind CSS has announced the open sourcing of version 4, which is a major rewrite without necessarily changing how Tailwind CSS works when you use it, but it's like a lot of the implementations change. The major point, and it's actually the only usable part at this point, I guess, is the configuration goes from a Tailwind config file, which was JavaScript or TypeScript, which is where you would extend your theme colors, override the spacing classes and stuff. All of this is moved to actual CSS in a CSS file, which sounds really interesting, and it gets really closer to the CSS, just CSS mantra. So instead of reaching for theme, that colors, and then extending it, you can define CSS variables for each of the core plugins like colors, font sizes, border radius, and all. And then you define the CSS variable with a specific namespace that kind of makes the communication with what it should extend or override. And so you define colors like this with like just CSS variable. You want a hex color, you can define it like this, and it will add it to the default theme. And there's also ways to, like you used to, reset all the colors. It's a little bit different. Instead of overriding, you can have, for the colors, namespace is -- color. And so you can go -- color -- for everything. And then you go initial and it just like wipes all of it.
Right. So does this mean like the inbuilt colors, will you access those the same way like throughout your components and things when you're setting a class on something? Will that be any different? Do you use CSS variables instead, or will that still be like, BG-red-200 or whatever to have a background that's a red of 200?
So as the consumer, nothing changes. You can always do BG purple 700, text gray, slate, something. But there will be probably an option to turn it off. Every CSS variable you define is also getting put in your CSS at the root scope, so you can access these variables on top of the utility classes. So it makes it really useful if you want to do some calc functions that consume a runtime variable. You can use that like this.
That's very cool. So if you wanted to use one of those as like a background color, would you do like BG dash and then some magic to get that CSS variable?
that would almost never be useful because the class is available. It's more like every time you try to reach for a theme value, I don't know if you've done crazy calc functions and then you can access theme, spacing that for or something like this, which was kind of like a magic way to go reach for the JavaScript config. Now you can use the CSS variable directly, which feels much more a CSS way to do things, I guess.
Very cool. So more the like custom configuration side of things is a little closer to CSS rather than understanding this Tailwind config and all the gymnastics you need to do there.
So what's really important to understand is right now it's not the case, but it will, the traditional Tailwind config will still be a thing. So you'll be able to do all the things that you used to in JavaScript if you prefer. Like some people like it because you can import like a JSON object of colors and then import like an image transform library or like whatever JavaScript ecosystem, you'll still be able to do all of this. But there's for most use cases where you don't really want to do this, and the only reason you use the config is because that's the tool, then you can move stuff to CSS. And it does make things much cleaner. And on top of this, there's also a lot of dependencies removed. It's not using post-CSS or auto prefixer anymore because they have moved to using Lightning CSS to do all the internal compiling, which means you literally install CSS, just install Tailwind CSS. That's the only dependency. And then you import Tailwind CSS in your CSS file. And you basically, at this point, you have everything going, and then you can start configuring your colors, your tokens.
Right. I'm assuming with like a name like Lightning CSS, this is probably more performant as well. Are there big performance improvements that they're expecting with the official release of Tailwind 4?
Oh, not only expecting, they've established them. It's quite trippy actually. One of the, if you check the blog post, I should probably have it while I talk about it freely, but
it'll be in those show notes. Definitely in the show notes.
Yeah. So they announced the open sourcing of V4 Alpha. And one of the I think it starts by saying like the key focus is speed, like performance. And Tailwind 4 is incredibly fast. When they open sourced it, it was already like something like 10 times faster than V3. And then the day after or 2 days after, Adam was like, oh crap, I shouldn't have open sourced it 2 days ago because I've just worked out a way to make it 6 times faster than the actual. And so now I think the first time it builds, it takes about 30, 40 milliseconds, whatever. I don't know. And then from then, every time it rebuilds, when you save, it's sub-millisecond. It's ridiculous. It's even sub 0.5 milliseconds. It's like 0.4, what even microseconds? Nanos, I don't know what it's a little mu letter Greek character. I don't know what it's, whatever smaller than milliseconds. So, and when you have I don't want to talk about too many things at the time, but there is still a post-CSS version, but there's a Vite plugin version of Tailwind. And that's what I've used to play with because I was in Astro, and Astro uses Vite already. And Vite is fast as hell. And so when you use Tailwind in a Vite project, in a Vite app or Astro app or Vite Remix or whatever, if you have the code on the left and the UI on the right, I have never seen anything closer to instant where you hit save and the UI has changed. Usually you save and there's a little brrr and then it appears. This one is like literally, it happens as you hit save, and it's 1 millisecond to compile plus whatever hot reloading the Vite does. It's like scary how fast it is and how you don't realize how productive it makes you when you prototype until you realize every time you hit Command S, which is like multiple times a minute, you just add these little delays together that just they go away and it goes so fast.
Nice. That's awesome. Is there a release date that they're hoping to hit? Is it kind of like, sometime this year this will go stable?
Yes. There is not official date, but Adam, I don't want to put him on the spot, but he said the idea is like by the time summer holiday comes, which in the northern hemisphere, not where we live, is usually June, July, August, I don't know. like the world summer, which is our winter. So I'd say something like 3-4 months from now is like some sort of realistic expectations. If you're not using any plugins, that takes away the typography plugin, I guess, which is quite popular. But if you're not registering any plugins and not writing any custom JavaScript logic, you can technically start using. And the idea is to try to help the team uncover little bugs and stuff. But from the experiments I've done, it's ridiculously fast and works like you expect. And when you hit some hurdle, you're like, oh, I found a bug, and then it's like, oh no, I'm the bug. I found the way I've not done it right. I'll give you an example. I've done a workshop previously with Tailwind on a multi-theme strategy with CSS variables, and I'm not shy to say that V4 makes a lot of this obsolete in a good way. Like the theming plugin is still a thing that will be needed, but it removes a lot of the flip-flopping between CSS variable and then adding them to the theme and extending the theme color scheme to match the CSS variables. All of that is all pretty much skipped in one step. But initially, here's what I thought. I was like, I'm going to do a highlight color, which is badass, #badass, which is a light green, similar to the bottom of our little UI thing that we're live streaming in. And so I went -- color -- highlight column hex badass. And that instantly gives you BG badass, text badass, border badass, whatever accent color, but all these different utilities, which is really cool. And then I was like, oh, cool. Now I can do another scope like data theme equals bananas and change this badass to a yellow, bright yellow something. And then I was like, first I thought if this is all it takes to make multi-theme, it's like completely ridiculous. And then it didn't work, and I thought, oh, maybe I found something that the compiler doesn't know how to process. But then I realized that when you define, they have this @theme block in CSS. When you define variables here, it doesn't actually, the variable exists, but it generates a utility classes that consume the value that you've given it directly. So if you look at the BG badass, BG badass will have a hard-coded hex color or whatever you pass in the value. And if you change the CSS variable at a different scope, the BG badass is still using the same hex value. So what I found is you can either consume the CSS variable, like you were saying just before. You can go BG brackets -- color -- highlight, which is color, whatever I called it, color badass highlight, I think was it. But then it's kind of weird because you have that arbitrary value that consumes the CSS variable. And then I thought, oh, I think what I can do is just go one step closer to what I did in my plugin, which is have another CSS variable that gets changed at different scope. And then the actual in the theme, when you define the color, you don't put a hard-coded value, you consume that other variable. And if it's pretty complicated to understand on the podcast, I've written a little blog post about this, about the setup. I've put it on my website, simonswiss.com, that we will definitely maybe put on the show notes.
Definitely be in the show notes.
But if you go through that,
everything's in the show notes. The show notes is this magical land where everything exists.
But yeah, essentially, if you've tried to do theming in V3, it was possible. But and the docs said that you had to define R, G, and B channels separately, not an RGB color, literally 255 space 47 space 93, which is the separated channels, space separated. And then in the theme, you had to create an RGB function and then consume that variable and then compose it with the internal Tailwind alpha value for the transparency. So that was there was a lot of very Tailwind specific and weird way of doing things. And also you would ship in your code some CSS variables which are separated alpha channels, or not alpha, R, G, and B. And there's likely no use case for these. It's not like something useful. Where now you just define the actual color in hex or HSL or OKLCH, whatever you want. And so you have that available, which is already more available if you use that CSS variable for something else. And then you're done. You don't have to go somewhere else and compose something with transparency. It just, the transparency works out of the box because they're using this new color mix function. So even if it's a hex value that doesn't have transparency, it's capable of composing a transparency in, which is super cool. So go ahead, play with Tailwind 4. You don't have a playground yet, but you can just start a new Vite project, or I can share my repo where I have this little, it's literally registering the Vite plugin in the Vite app or Astro app. And then it's pretty interesting to see the CSS output because it's using some new technical things like color mix, and it's super cool. Super cool.
Awesome. That sounds, so much simpler. And if I'm reading this correctly, Simon assures you if you have a simple Tailwind config, you can use this right now in your production apps.
Hey, stop.
And he will personally fix anything that goes wrong.
That's exactly what I said.
If you do have a fun side project, this might be a good thing to
it's a good place.
Now. I'm going to start trying to use it in anything I build and see those lightning quick changes.
10-15 minutes before jumping live today, I saw someone tagged me, and they've done they were using Tailwind UI components, and they've implemented like a theming strategy with a little panel that lets you pick a theme dominant color, and everything reflows, and he shows the sidebar with the CSS variable redefinition at runtime. It's awesome. So it's, at the end of the day, you can't really break the checkout button of your e-commerce store with CSS. Some styles or some I think the thing that might bite you is you forgot that you had the typography plugin for the blog, and then you go there and it's like, oh, it's all reset, unstyled, because the plugins are not yet supported. Maybe I'm talking from last week, Tailwind V4, which is very, very old now. Like it's already, yesterday I've upgraded to Alpha 8. I think the first one was Alpha 3, the one they opened. And the big change between these two is the speed. Like it's really, really, really crazy fast. But I don't know what the timeline is to start adding support for plugins and then Tailwind config and all this stuff. But I would definitely encourage you to go play with it, because that's the best way to be ready when it's out. And also, it is the best way to help the team if you find an actual thing that doesn't work. I think I helped them I found one thing that was sort of weird, but also true to how CSS works. If you were transforming from scale 0 something in a keyframe animation, so scale 0 to 1, so it kind of scales up from invisibly small. If you use the keyframe with scale 0, it would transform it to matrix 3D 0000, something that apparently, speaking with Jordan, makes sense in the CSS spec. But then if you had another transform like a rotation, it would just kill that thing. So in my workshop that I literally delivered the day after the first release of V4, I found that if you go scale 0.01, it's still so small that you won't see it, but it preserves the rotation and other transforms composed with it. So I don't know if it was a bug. It's just like a weird edge case of
I'd love to hear more about your workshop, but firstly, how much of it have you already rewritten to use this new stuff, or have you got a branch that's like the entire thing, what the entire thing would be with V4?
Yeah, so it was the day before, and the way the workshop is structured, there is a single app replicated for each problem and solution, and there's about 50 problem solution sequences, so that's 100 duplicated apps with like progressively increasing the where you're at in the build. And all of it is using the theme, the Tailwind config JavaScript to extend because we build a Figma design, and there's like special font sizes and special colors and keyframe animations and stuff. And I was like, all of this is redoable in CSS, but it completely literally changes the approach. And also I was like, I don't want on Friday the 8th of March, which is for the rest of the world, that's Thursday 7. So that's literally the day less than 24 hours after the announcement. I don't want to teach this now because it's technically it's not a stable version. It will be one day, but it's like I don't want to teach something that now is like, okay, now you're stuck because you can't ship this because it's not supporting your plugin. So what I thought was a cool idea, and this is what I did, is at the start of the workshop, I said, you've probably seen V4 has shipped, not shipped, but has open sourced, and this will change some of the like things, how they work. And I said, we're going to go through the V3 way of doing things. And then afterwards, I've added a whole exercise, like scrambling the day before the workshop. Instead of checking for typos and stuff, I just created a new exercise that is called porting our builds to V4. And basically, it shows how step 1 is like install the new version of Tailwind CSS and the Vite plugin. Step 2 is delete literally everything like post CSS, auto prefixer, Tailwind config, to show that it's like, most of it still works, but we've lost our customizations. And then step 3 is recreate the customizations through CSS variables. And I thought that's great because it doesn't show, hey, start using just that for now, but it also shows what you've learned is not like obsolete because it still works. And then here's how you can port it to the next way of doing things when it's ready.
Very cool. Awesome. I've just realized that there are about to be arborists outside my window chopping down a tree. So it might get real loud, but we're just gonna roll with it.
Yes.
But I might end up trying to like probe Simon to talk a lot and then mute my microphone. We'll see.
Well, the last 2 weeks I've been talking a lot, I feel already.
Yeah.
Let's hear John now before we lose John to the arborist.
Right. So something I wanted to talk about was this sad news that has happened at PlanetScale. So if you're not aware, PlanetScale has gotten rid of their hobby tier or their free tier, and most of their DevRel and sales team, their marketing and sales teams. And so, yeah, I'm sure, like, it sounds like they have very good reasons to do this, and it's not out of, it's not that they are a failing company and need to do this to survive. It sounds like they just are refocusing their efforts elsewhere. But yeah, it's a sad reflection on, I think, like changes that are obviously happening in the DevRel space. I think there have been a lot of companies that have made the decision during these difficult economic times to deprioritize DevRel teams, and so yeah, I just wanted to say that sucks, and yeah, I hope that all of the people that have been losing their jobs recently find awesome places that they enjoy being at, which I don't think will be a problem for people like Aaron Francis, who is one of the people from PlanetScale, who has a huge following and has done incredibly like amazing things with their PlanetScale YouTube channel. It's often what I use internally at Supabase as like a as an example of what we should be doing better and how we should be doing awesome database content and more like Postgres theory content. Because yeah, he's just done an awesome job. So yes, it's very sad to see a company in the space deprioritize their DevRel team. But I think, yeah, all of these people, these very skilled, awesome people, are all available. If you have companies that want to scale up your DevRel team, now would be an amazing time to get incredible people like Aaron Francis and like Chantastic from Chromatic recently, but from React Holiday and a bunch of stuff before that. But yeah, it's a sad time, but hopefully the economy turns the other way soon, and there is a lot of investment there, because I see this is like a short-term reprioritization, but I think it's going to have really big long-term effects. Like DevRel is such a like a slow burning kind of thing. Like you get massive payoffs, but it's over a long period of time. Like usually you are,
Yep.
you're paying a lot of money for having a team of people that are creating a bunch of content that probably takes a long time to create, and maybe you have video editors and stuff that you're paying on top of that. And the idea is that they're getting a lot of hobby kind of hobby developers excited about the product, and that costs the company even more money, because then they're footing the bill for, especially like a database company, they're footing the bill for all of those free tier databases that are running somewhere in the world. But the idea is that you get developers so excited about this that then they go into their workplace, or down the line when they work somewhere in 5 years, or they have a more influential position somewhere in 5 years, they've had such a great experience with that product that they want to use it for something internally. And so that's where you get the payoff. But yeah, I feel like it'll be interesting to see how this plays out over 5 years, because there might be, reprioritizing those funds now might help for the next year or two. But what does it look like in 5 years? It'll be, interesting to see.
Yep. Very wise words. I mean, what things look like in 5 years is very interesting beyond, like with the whole AI stuff. Like a lot of things are going to change. But I think you touch on really good points. This slow burning thing that is hard to measure, like DevRel, and what's the impact. Hey, we pay these fancy people with fancy YouTube studios, and we can't really show there's excitement on Twitter, and the Discord is growing, but it's kind of hard to, like, for someone who's really into KPIs and like ROI, and they're like, oh, we spend that amount of money, what's the return on investment? It's like you said, like whatever we've produced as content creators will continue even if you cut the team now. Like the channel is still there. Like I take my example, the work I've done on the YouTube Tailwind Labs channel ever since I'm not on the team, which is almost 2 years now. It still has a drastic impact, positive, I hope, for the team. So that's sort of like, it's a long-term investment. And it's sort of like SEO work. Like some people are like, oh, we don't have instant result with SEO. We're going to stop doing SEO or performance optimization. And then when you stop, it's not instantly noticeable that you actually, something is like decaying and getting worse. But then you get to a point where like, oh, this is why we were doing all this stuff. So now in the context of Tailwind Labs, I think, as weird as it sounds, they've probably done a choice that is not going to impact them by stopping me from making videos, because they've reached this like critical mass, or like velocity, or like the whole community is acting as DevRels for Tailwind at some point. For good and for bad. Like people will defend it way too aggressively, which I think I had a unique touch on always being positive and welcoming, where some people will like take the pitchforks. But I want to echo what you said. I was looking at the Planet Scale team as like some blueprint of like, this is like content creation done right. And I think it's easy to make content on CSS because it's very visual. There was a tweet thread 2 days ago about this. Front-end devs just make some pretty stuff and change colors, and people enjoy demos. But if you're trying to demo a database stuff and like replication across the network at the edge, it's like, and you do a great job at that at Superbase as well, and in your Egghead courses, it's much harder to get people visually excited when nothing happens on the screen except, oh, look, the time. In a way, Tailwind does the same with the build speed under 1 millisecond. It's not a visual stuff, but it still gets the hype. I thought Aaron and team were doing a fantastic job at like making something that's not sexy by itself, like incredibly compelling and sexy in the demos. And maybe sexy is not the right word I should use, but like they were doing excellent job. So when it happens, and same with the Chantastic, like the same week, I was like, just like you, I was like so bummed out because I've never met them in person. I'm about to meet Michael Chan in a couple of weeks in Salt Lake City, but they just genuinely look like amazing individuals and human beings. Same with Aaron, like the way he talks about his twins, and he's like so approachable, and I've never met him, but every time I reach out, he instantly talks back to me. And yeah, it's struck me to the core pretty much. And I've went, as far as I know, was not a economic related layoff. That was more like a strategic decision, but it still rings a bell of like, I'm a DevRel. I put my heart in something. I think I did a great job. I do selfishly think that I was the blueprint for a lot of people that want to do DevRel. And some people told that to me. And then one day it stops and you're like, what is my job that important? And yeah, I feel for all these people that got laid off recently, because it makes you revisit a lot of things and also think, do companies need that? And then you like to go to places where it's like, actually you convince yourself that it's not really needed. It's just like, do a good product, it'll market itself. And then you realize, no, this is what people don't get about marketing, is like the best product without good marketing goes nowhere.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a cycle, and companies like PlanetScale will eventually say, oh, we should probably reinvest a bit in DevRel because the adoption has plummeted and stuff. And just like front end goes to everything on the client, oh no, let's go back to everything on the server. And now it's like slowly already, but maybe it'll sprinkle Alpine.js. Like we just need to, there's this constant balance readjustment. And I think DevRel is going through one of these. It's probably a few more people will lose jobs and it'll go too far. And then people will realize again, marketing sucks and I hate talking to people, and go and doing sales and realize that this content creation kind of acts as this marketing machine, and just get back into it a bit more.
Yeah. And I think with, like you were saying, AI content, like there's a big push in like, well, we could just use a lot of, we could create AI influencers that can create this content. And I think AI is really good at like summarizing content that already exists, like summarizing features from the docs or something like that. I think, I don't know, with the point that AI is at the moment, I think it stands out quite a lot to me when you're watching AI content versus a real person. And so
watching or reading or listening or under all forms, it's quite easy to tell, and it's pretty off-putting, I guess.
Yeah.
While we're on the topic, I want to touch on two things. One of them was, I think, back to Chantastic, he did this like layoff vlog thing, which in retrospect I was like, I wish I did the same when I, like, instead of like going to dark places and questioning myself and then burning out and then all the stuff I've done, I was just processing it out and explaining what is going through and the feeling on the industry. I thought he did it in a very tactful way. First video, he clearly said, I'm not happy, I'm not stoked that it happened, but also I see it as an opportunity, and just channel that into something very positive. And this led to a discussion about, I forgot who said that, but someone mentioned that DevRel, like companies think that it needs to be all technical and showing how the product works and how to get started and how to create an account and hopefully go into the paid tier. And then someone said that DevRel should be a lot more about building human relationship with the community and like have people really get attached emotionally to the person that creates the vibe around the product. And this leads to adoption probably more than anything that you can do, like any super nice API and elegant ways to like connect with other third-party services. And in a way, like marketing again is that, like if you go to a real estate agent, they're gonna do all these tactics of like baking fresh bread in the oven so it smells like a family home, and then just get really friendly with you. And they try to build this. The really good real estate agents, they build a relationship with you. They're not like transactional and just full of BS and trying to fake stuff. They build like a true relationship with the community, and then people go to them for trust. And I completely agree with that message. And in a way, I feel what we're doing, you and me now, is kind of like that stuff. Like we're not necessarily trying to teach skills about technical stuff because we already do that in so many other channels, but just, I don't know, someone who watches this and comes back every week, there's an argument that there's this nice friendship build up, and this can also lead to good things. You don't have to always be selling the product. I do firmly believe that being a really nice human public face for a company can be super beneficial. And for the record, that's how I see you. That's how I saw Aaron Francis. That's how I saw myself at Tailwind Labs. It's like more than just another person teaching how to build stuff. It's like adding a bit of personality and friendship and happiness and talk about family and all that stuff.
Yeah. And Tom mentioned in the chat, like with Aaron's content specifically, that a lot of the videos were on the Planet Scale channel were not like marketing Planet Scale as a product. It was more like just educational focused content. So it was more about teaching just raw MySQL stuff that anyone could use anywhere. You could use that with WordPress. You could use it anywhere you're using MySQL. But the focus wasn't on this is how you do this thing with Planet Scale. It was this is a concept that you know that you might want to learn, and then that just brings so many people that are just learning about database content. Like they then see Planet Scale as this, like that YouTube channel as a place where they can learn more about just database theory. So of course, when they're looking for something down the line, when they're like, all right, we want something that is more scalable, we don't want to manage our own infrastructure, we want, you know, branching, and so where are we going to look to get that? Obviously the company that has already like taught them so much that they see as this like this like educational resource. Obviously the people teaching the content would be good at running that database company. So I think there's that kind of long-term benefit for creating this helpful educational content that isn't just shilling the product that you're for the company that you work for, but just providing people value, knowing that down the line this will hopefully pay off. And I think usually it does, but it might just be a little bit too far down the line. Tom also mentioned that he learned a lot of MySQL stuff from Aaron's videos, and I'm the same. Like I've learned so much about databases. Like, you know, I work for Superbase, which is built on top of Postgres. Planet Scale was built on top of MySQL, if you're not aware of those differences. So they're both database companies that use SQL as like that's what's underneath, but they're just different flavors of SQL. But I've watched every course that Aaron has put out, or the big course that he put out through Planet Scale, and all of the videos that he put out through the Planet Scale YouTube channel, and have learned so much more about like databases as a whole, and have become a much better like educator about the stuff that I can teach in Postgres, because of what I learned. Even though it was MySQL, it was just all just really good quality educational resources about databases. So if you want to learn about databases, you should go and check out I think it's planetscale.com/learn. They've got a really good MySQL course on there, and I think they're about to put out or maybe they have put out now, a scaling MySQL course, which I think will also be great. So check those out. Reach out to Aaron. Tell him he's awesome. And if you're looking for DevRel people, send him a DM.
To flip this into a positive, the good news, and I'm not speaking for those who lost their job, but there's right now an incredible amount of talent and amazing people that are looking for a role, I imagine, unless they decide this is my sign to strike on my own. And that means other companies that see beyond this pure, we've decided to focus on profits, which kind of business makes sense. But there's an opportunity for for the people that lost their job, they have maybe a new thing that's going to turn out to be even better. But also for companies that have been like thinking, oh, we should find our own version of like the Aaron Francis of like, but for the product we do, like, well, maybe Aaron is available. Like there's layoffs, but there's talented and good people. And I think, again, good people with human skills as the core number one thing. I've never hired, but I think I would put emphasis on that first and foremost. And I know that these people would find great companies, and great companies will find these people as well.
I hear what you're saying. Aaron should move across to Postgres and come and work at Superbase.
I like it.
That's what I heard. I'm hearing what I want to hear.
Yeah, well, Australia has lots of nice opportunities, both in weather and lifestyle and jobs, and yeah, just saying.
All right, back onto more positive things. I want to hear about your workshop. How did
My what?
very last week you ran your first workshop of the Epic Web series,
Epic. Yeah,
Epic Web,
I did.
and yeah, you ran your first live workshop focusing on Tailwind. Using, if you listen to the last episode, we talked a lot about this awesome LMS that Kent and co have built to kind of manage people in a space and make it feel like it's not just a Zoom call, but a little bit more of a fun game. But yeah, I'd love to hear about how it went.
Cool. Yeah. So Friday, and my day started at 5. I was pondering between putting the alarm at 5:15 and rolling straight into the workshop, or 5 o'clock, so I have time for one coffee, quick shower, and then I'm like, okay, I'm fresh, let's go. And I opted for this.
Can I just quickly guess, was it the night before you made the decision to do the earlier morning with the coffee, and then the morning of you decided to hit the snooze button and just get up at the latest possible point?
No, I decided the night before I'm gonna have a coffee and shower combo, and I did that. The alarm, like, I think I was awake 5 minutes before the alarm in like the classic. Did I miss my flight? Did I? Wait, what time is it? You know, the hear the birds outside, which makes you assume that you've slept past 4:45. Because why would you have birds at 4:45? But we do where we live.
Yeah.
But yeah, I made a coffee, had a shower, and had the coffee in the shower, which was actually pretty cool. And then
It's a very watered down coffee. Every sip, it just fills up further.
yeah, you have to drink it quickly before it gets too mixed with the soap and all this stuff. But yeah, I walked here, and I had the night before I came in this space behind me, and I set up the. Don't care about the office, but I set up my external monitor with like all the windows that I needed and nothing else, because I never restart my computer, so I had like all these tabs and apps that I have used 3 months ago. I was like, don't need that, don't need that, don't need that. Scrap, scrap, scrap. And I've made my thing minimal with a big clock in the middle, digital clock. So if I glance for a split second, I know what time it is. And yeah, so the workshop went good and bad at the same time. It went really good in a sense that most people enjoyed and learned things, and the reviews are pretty. I had some feedback forms, and the vast majority of people rated 5 out of 5 or 4 out of 5, which is like the range you want to be in, ideally. But the thing that I've done wrong is, and I think it's a pretty common thing when teaching live workshops with a lot of people, is I had way too much content. I had enough content to make a live stream where I go through the content myself, but you add questions and people that have something that doesn't work with the app, or like some tangential question about when should you abstract to a component and things like this. And like, I'm passionate about this, so I can't just say, oh, no time for the question, let's keep going. So what I've realized is this workshop that I've done needs to be a 2-day workshop instead of one, to be like feeling like we can at any time you just stop. Because I said, put your hand up, any question, this is why it's a workshop, like you have access to me. Just interrupt me, it's not rude, and then let's go through this. And I've done this, but the trade-off is we didn't finish all the exercises, which I think is still better, because the way the app is structured, you can go through it yourself with once, especially if you've done a few exercises with me. It's like, hey, go and finish this. And I was really clear on this. I said, this is not a 9 to 5 and now you've paid for your workshop, off you go, I'm never talking to you. I was like, go through the rest of the exercises and please ask me question in Discord, and I will very, very gladly help you and answer and continue the discussion. And by the way, I never expect people to stay longer because of wherever time zone they are and commitments they have. But at the end of the workshop, I said, oh, I'll hang out in here for a few minutes if you have any questions and stuff, because it was 11 a.m. at the time of the workshop. So I was like, I'm here. I don't have anywhere to go. I'm at work. Turns out I stayed 100 minutes, an hour and 40 minutes. And like all my other workshops, this was probably the best part of the workshop, because it goes into really open-ended questions. And then I start sharing my screen and showing examples like live coding or like articles and stuff. One person said, I love Tailwind, I love the workshop. It's awesome, I'm very happy I joined, but I can't convince my coworker to use Tailwind. And her question was like, do you have any tips or ways that you can help people actually try it and like it? And if you know anything about me, this has basically been my number one mission from day one, is try to help people get past this initial, I don't know what we're looking at in the live stream. We have some blankets happening, but I'll keep talking. I've always been passionate about positively encouraging people to try Tailwind and then see through the initial classic, this is ugly, this doesn't scale reaction. To the point where I've done a conference talk about this, I've written articles. This is, I guess, what led me to eventually work at Tailwind Labs, because I presented this talk in front of Adam and Steve. So yes, I have a lot of ammunition to help you convince your colleagues. But the bottom line is you have to make them try. And as long as they don't try, and this, I know it's a provocative headline in the Tailwind CSS homepage. I'm not talking about the best practices don't work. This is like a little bit clickbaity, but it is what. Anyway, it is what it is. But underneath, there's a paragraph that says, "I promise you, I cannot do anything to convince you that it's a good idea unless you actually try it." And this sentence is the most true thing of the whole marketing page. As long as you don't try it, no matter how smart and clever and pragmatic you are, you will never think that it's a good idea. And once you try it, you might still not like it, but the vast majority from the last 7 years I've observed, like people very often end up like, oh, hang on a second, actually this is really good. As we've lost John, but I can keep my monologue. Watch me switch to this crazy good view with my signature there. So we had a really nice post-workshop chat, which turned into some really interesting discussions, and I really enjoyed that. So let's bring back our friend John, who's is having his version of the Australian internet woes. There he is.
Hello, I'm back.
You travel to the house. Oh, the tree thing is happening.
Yeah, so it got very loud right outside the office. So I've run away to the furthest corner of the house. Trees are being chopped down. I've moved to Bluetooth headsets instead of my nice microphone.
Yeah, well,
but I like what you were saying, Simon.
Yeah. Pretend you listen. No, I know you listen. If you wanted to have a benchmark on why it matters to have a good microphone, and you don't have to break the bank. John's using the Shure MV7, which is less than 200 Australian dollars. Well, I don't know about this.
I've actually switched. We need to do another episode
you've switched.
On our updated, because I have completely thrown my content creation process out the window. I am doing I actually listened to the podcast where we went through our setups, and nothing is the same. So I would love to do another episode on exactly that. But I was using the Shure MV7. Which is an awesome USB mic, similar microphone to the Shure SM7B, which is like the famous broadcaster mic. But I recently switched to an AKG C414, which is a condenser mic, which is another reason that I needed to leave that room that has chainsaws outside the window, because the chainsaws will be very much picked up with that mic, whereas they may not have been so much with the MV7.
Yeah. It's so weird. Like I can notice the difference in audio, and I prefer your good mic for sure. But when you appeared in that window in the new setup, I was like, oh, this is funny. Like I'm not used to this, and I'm really enjoying the lo-fi. I don't know what it is, but just casualness of the setup. And every time you talk, it wobbles a bit because it's on your lap. And it is, there's something awesome about this. Going back to you look at interesting podcasts, quite often they have the dodgiest setup but really good audio, and I think there's something nice. Same with like videos like TikTok and stuff. Like the most viral stuff is usually the handheld shitty quality, and sometimes it's even edited to look more like unprocessed. Like, and this raw stuff is actually so refreshing in this world of like perfect lighting and perfect audio and stuff.
Yeah, I feel like the difficult part is that this still needs to go out as an audio podcast. And I feel like listening to it without any video or any other like sensory context, I feel like it would get to you, the dip in quality. But maybe we should set up in more casual environments with a laptop on the lap, but just set up a good microphone.
I think that's the key here. Yeah, it's like decent audio, and then you can do whatever. I listened to the podcast called MFM. It's My First Million, which sounds like such a cheesy name, but it's a really good business podcast with lots of business ideas, and like we do in tech now, like the cool stuff they've seen on the internet in like terms of new startups. And and the hosts are really, really interesting and great at storytelling. And like they do have these really fancy now setups at home, but every now and then they're like in a hotel room or Airbnb or whatever, and it's the most ghetto setup, like just using the normal camera, and they always have a decent mic that they travel with, and it's like if you were in your car and driving, you wouldn't even notice, but then if you watch the YouTube stream, you're like, oh, usually there's like super fancy background, and this time it's like a completely, but it actually adds interest to the like, oh, they're traveling and they still go through the podcast, which is cool. Which, unless you have something on the topic, I don't even know what the topic is. This like doing things despite life getting in the way is another thing I really wanted to touch on. Shout out to you, Mr. Jason Lengsdorf, if you happen to be watching or listening. Jason has put out a video yesterday which resonated with a lot of people doing the sort of work we do. So Jason has gone self-employed for a while now. He kind of betted on himself to be almost like a dev role as a service, as a hired gun dev role. Like, I don't want your job, but you can hire me for 3 months and I'm going to put structures in place and help your team create content and stuff, which I also contemplating doing after moving on from Tailwind Labs. And so it sounds amazing, and it is amazing, and I'm sure Jason's doing great. But he opened up about like some real struggles that I really related with, which was this constant thought of like, I want to do this, but I want to put the right time so it's really good. And so this week is a bit too much, and then next week there's my niece's birthday, and then it's Easter holiday, and there'll be kids around, and then it gets too cold because it's winter. Like, you can constantly find the next thing that's going to not make you procrastinate, but find valid reason why you can't do the perfect quality work you do. And in this video, Jason sits, he just got one of these photograph white background, like never infinite background, whatever you call it, like it's like a white sheet, and it sits with a microphone, handheld stuff, and he holds it pretty low so that there's echo and the image quality is a bit grainy, and he's like completely true, transparent. He said, having a shit day, my wife has a flat tire, she's waiting in the car, I have a call in 10 minutes, I have all the reasons to not do this video, but I'm gonna do it. And he explains the whole, I constantly find reasons to not do something and wait for life to slow down. Surprise, it doesn't slow down. There's always the next thing. And one of the sentences that hit me really hard was, and the words come as he said on the thing, he said there's a little bit too much going on. And then he says, guess what? Every day has a bit too much going on. And that's when I was like, shit, this is exactly why you and me, John, have stopped the podcast, because there was always a little bit too much and we wanted to do this super polished stuff, and we don't have time for the editing and the retakes and the cuts and all that stuff. And Jason's message is like, I don't feel like doing this video. I feel like having really polished output, but I'll do it anyway. And this is not going to be my flagship quality, but I'll do it anyway. And this is really this mantra, which I think we decided to come back, you and I, with this approach of like, there's trees cut, stuff it, I'll do it anyway. I'll move in the lounge room with the Bluetooth headset. And I had my mother-in-law and dogs and all the stuff happening and the windows open. We do it anyway. And I've started myself doing a lot of live streams for that exact reason, because I'm paralyzed with this is not good enough. The audio's not great. I need to wait for the sun to go down so I can close the window without suffocating. But then I have to do dinner for kids. Like, there's always something gets in the way when you try to have this perfect production. And looking back into my times at Tailwind Labs before it ended, I was in this exact scenario with homeschool, lockdown, COVID stuff, floods. Everything was going against the grain, and I should have said, stuff it, I'm going in the car, I'm driving within the 5K radius I'm allowed with the lockdown, and I found those spots in the outside, and I'm just gonna record my video intro there and just find ways to do it instead of trying to have this perfect quality always. And so I just wanted to give a big shout out to Jason, because I completely adhere to this message of doing stuff anyway and forgetting about the premium quality, because as he finishes the video, he says, polished things are nice, but no, things that don't exist because they're not polished are not, they're useless. And that the amount of stuff I didn't ship because I thought it's not ready or I need to re-record this is frustrating me. And so I'm really happy he sent that message.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Resonated with our situation, and not just for the Navbar podcast, but also I'm doing a lot of work trying to keep the videos that I'm putting out on the Superbase YouTube channel being really consistent and high quality. And yeah, I've had a couple of times recently where I've been like, well, I'll put off putting this video out until next week because I want to do a nice overlay and I want that to be perfect. I don't want to, it'll compromise the whole video if I forget to do that thing, or if I don't have time to do that thing. And I've been, trying to adopt more of a mentality of like, well, if I don't put it out this week, then that pushes another video back a week. Like, essentially it's just a video not being launched for the week. Mm-hmm. So is this worth not launching it and this thing not existing, or something else not existing because I've put so much time into one little overlay bit? Or could I just quickly mock something up in like Keynote and use that as the overlay bit? And so I've been also trying to adopt this kind of mindset of just putting things out that aren't absolutely perfect. Because I think it being out in the universe and people having access to it is still better than it not existing at all.
And so there's probably a different view from a company and an individual, but again, going back to this building dev rails that are humans and not just like shilling the product machines. Every single time I've done something that was a bit raw and I was like, I'm going live, I'm unprepared, this is consistently where the audience reception was the warmest, and like, this is so cool, I struggle myself to start. And same with Jason's video, everyone resonated with it. Chantastic did one where he's sitting in his hallway bare feet and with the kids drawing above his head, and he's like, I lost my job, I'm a full-time dad because my wife is away this week, this is tough. And again, everyone was like, oh my god, this is the content we need. We don't need you to teach us one more time how a storybook works. And like, there's actually always, in this digital world where you mentioned there's more and more AI content, like the more human you can be, the actual more connection you can get with the audience. And sometimes we trip ourselves by trying to have this perfect production to a point. One day it might be like a slice of our audience might be like, oh, this is AI generated, this is too polished, it's too consistent. Fireship, who does these videos without being on his face, he's got all his videos, you look at the comments and people are like trapped because he's done a demo of AI-ificating his voice. And every comment is like, I am 100% sure this is AI. There's no way the way you said that word. And he's genuinely getting the shit. It's like, dude, I'm sitting there, I'm recording this, I'm doing these videos, and now nobody thinks that it's, I love almost intentionally keeping it raw and more natural, because people need this. They want to go farm potatoes and cows and quit the industry. And like, maybe if we have more authenticity in our content, it's actually a good thing.
Yeah, real content from real people with real stories. It's yeah, I think it is what people want to hear. Like this,
Yes.
just yeah, like what we've changed the kind of focus of our podcast to being more about a conversation between us rather than having like we've said multiple times, this being the place that you come to learn a particular concept or a particular framework or whatever. Like you are not going to come out of a podcast understanding how to use that framework. Like it's not, and especially if you're listening to audio only, that's not the optimal place to learn. It's a great place to get a summary of information and kind
Yes.
of hear about things that you might want to go research somewhere else, but it's not the place to learn how to actually use that framework. And so, yeah, it being more of a conversation between us rather than using it as like, documentation for how to use that tool, I think is a intentional shift that we've been doing that's in line with this.
Yeah.
One more thing, speaking of tools and web frameworks and things, one more thing that I wanted to chat about this week. I don't know, maybe it would be better to talk about it next week once it's all finished, but let's give it a go. Astro this week has been doing their launch week, which has been very exciting so far. So we're recording this on a Wednesday, so I think only the Monday and Tuesday releases have happened so far.
It's still Tuesday night in the US, in most of the world. Yeah.
Right, all those people living in the past. Well, what has happened this week? I just realized I was about to read off part of the blog post and realized I was looking at the wrong blog post. So what's dropped so far, Simon?
Oh, is it on me?
It's on you. Sorry, buddy.
Yeah, I wasn't busy enough with my workshop and Tailwind V4. So this morning I actually checked I don't know everything. I know Astro shipped 4.5 and it's me off the cuff without notes or anything. There's a bunch of new things, but the big thing that I've noticed this week is the Astro DB, which is a SQL database optimized and exclusively for Astro that you can get from Astro by importing from Astro column DB in any project. And this is a paid service at some point, but there's a very generous free tier. And I don't know Fred K-Shot personally, but I know him enough to, like, he was, the announcement came kind of alongside the planet scale stuff, and he was very clear that this wasn't like a setup to get people to try it and then change the pricing. And like it seems like this free tier will remain a free tier. But to be summarizing, it's a fork of SQLite, which is called, of course, now I don't know the name. Terso, the company, has created this open source format, which is something light SQL. Please help me. What's the name?
SQLite? Yeah, it's SQLite.
No, SQLite is the thing. Yes, but it's a different one, which is.
Is it Terso?
Terso did that thing. They forked SQLite and work in the open with them. I'm going to find this right now. I'm going to go in my threads, in my ThinkMill internal stuff.
Right, so this is an actual proper database. I remember, like, with the first announcement, it wasn't very clear, like, exactly what it was under the hood, and some people were hypothesizing.
LibSQL is the thing, which is
LibSQL. Okay.
Yeah. So think like, how Fly.io distributes globally your database. So wherever you access it, it's like a CDN for database. I think that's what Terso and LibSQL does. It's like this distributed SQLite file-based database. Anyway, you import the DB from Astro, and then you have it's wrapping Drizzle ORM with some niceness added to it, and you basically have a fully type-safe way to read from the database that you imported, but Astro being SSR and having API rights and all that stuff, you can do full CRUD operations. You can create new records in your database. You can update stuff. You can do joins to do like relationships, and it's like super powerful. And I imagine you being in the Superbase world, there's like a lot of similarities in the sort of, it's it provides that sort of this like backend as a service thing, or maybe not backend but database plus ORM as a service. And right now it's because it is wrapped so nicely that some people already said, I'm not using Astro, but can I use this? This is great. And Fred was like, right now it just works for Astro. And all I've done is read the blog this morning, and it shows how to create a table. It's literally import create table from AstroDB, and then you go create table, and then you add your columns, sort of like any migration. Like if you're in Laravel, you create a migration file with the different fields. If you're in Prisma, you do schema. Drizzle is the same, like you have the schema definition. And then you go like column, string, name, column number, age, whatever. And then you can create tables. You can create then a database that kind of collates these tables together. And then you can just query the data, write to it. And it's like...
Yeah, I didn't realize this was such a fully managed database, a globally distributed database. So yeah, something that is sometimes challenging with having edge computing, but a single source origin database is that even if you get your compute close to the users, we talked all about this on an episode of the Navbar. Go back and check out everything you need to know about the edge to learn everything you need to know about the edge. But yeah, a challenging problem that exists in this kind of edge world that web development is kind of living in at the moment is you can get servers running close to your users. You can get these CDN nodes that are responding to your users' request very geographically close to your users and reduce that latency. But if you need to go to a central database to go and get any of the data, to go and check anything, then it's kind of like showing a loading spinner. Like, yeah, cool, you did something quickly, but that's not what I need. I need the actual data that I want to see the valuable stuff that I want to see on that page. And so having a globally distributed database, which SQLite is the perfect technology for that, because you just have a file. And so the file contains everything that is in the database, and you basically open up this file, do select statements, insert statements. It is managed like a database, but it is just a single file that you can move anywhere. The problem there is that when you want to, when you update data, when you add a new row to that SQLite database, you're adding it to the SQLite database that's closest to your location. So I'm in Australia. It probably goes to Sydney. So let's say it writes a new record to Sydney. How do you get those changes out to all of the other SQLite databases that exist in all of those other geographical locations? And so, what I didn't realize is that this is a managed service that does that for you. And so I haven't looked into it. I've just scanned over the blog as you were talking, but it managing rolling out those changes to all those other nodes and keeping everything in sync. That is extremely exciting, especially if you don't need to even leave your Astro app. You don't need to manage any other infrastructure. You're already using Astro. You just do Astro DB, and it looks like the generous free tier is an extremely generous free tier at the moment. So it looks like unlimited databases, unlimited applications, 1 gigabyte of storage, 1 billion reads per 1 billion row reads, 1 million row writes. That is a huge amount of that's a startup. You can build your whole startup on this, and so that's very exciting.
Yeah, and so I arguably don't know enough about databases and all that to truly understand the power. But from a consumer Astro user, I don't know if I know you have used, I don't know if the audience has, but when you add an integration to Astro like React or Svelte or Vercel or all these integrations, first-party stuff they have, you go npx astro add and then the name of the integration, and you have the most delightful experience where it's like the little Houston, the Astro mascot, say, hey, I need to install these packages, cool? And you say yes or no if you want to stop. And it installs, and then it says, hey, I need to add these lines to your Astro config to register the integration, cool? And you're like, yep. And so for this DB, it's exactly that. You go npx astro add DB, That's it. The namespace, like they understand that it's a first-party thing, so it's astro.js/db. And you do this, and then you literally import define.db from astro.db that you just installed, and you can export define.db to create your tables, create columns. Like I said, you can like seed the database. You can do all sort of Drizzle ORM querying, insert stuff, filtering, relationship with the inserts, joins, and from what I understand, Drizzle is similar to Prisma, but the syntax is much closer to actual SQL. Like it's instead of creating a whole ergonomic way to query stuff, it's more like select all from blah blah blah. Or it seems closer to the metal in that sense. And yeah, this is pretty exciting. Like when I saw the numbers, the pricing stuff, to me that doesn't. A billion reads seems like a lot of reads, but it's a table row, so like there's a lot of rows in the table. But like even the next million is 0.0001 cent per million, so it's like you feel pretty. Like I know my little side project would not reach that. You have now entered the paid tier anytime soon, unless I don't know something goes viral or get DDoS attacked. And this is really exciting. Yeah.
A good time for a reminder that you should never just select star from a table. Always, well, I guess the columns wouldn't matter if it's per row reads, but you probably want to add a limit on there just in case you accidentally go and select millions of rows that you don't actually need to be selecting. So always add a limit to your select clauses, kids.
Yeah, it's I don't know what the whole. I feel like Supabase is Postgres, so it's not like a completely direct. It's like apple and oranges, right? But because of our skill sets, I would love to do a stream where we built an Astro project that uses that. And because I wouldn't really know how to really optimize like the whole CRUD operations using that thing. I work it out, but like I'd probably be. Is this naive or is this the proper? Like I would probably select star from all everything and stuff like that. And that'd be pretty cool to do some sort of like build a project using that.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. And just
YouTube series or something.
Experimenting with it, like learning it as we do it, rather than just having an example and then building out the example, knowing what we're going to build and building it in this nice little walled garden where everything works. It'd be fun to do a stream where we just kind of install it on a project and see how we go. That should be the tagline for the navbar, is just work out the mistakes, work out how to fix every mistake as it comes.
Well, yeah, look, the topic we talked about, someone left in the comments, I love Simon's streams because it shows the process when things don't work rather than everything is perfect. And if you've watched my videos, they're very perfect. And like, even if I did a typo, that doesn't matter. I will edit so it feels like I've typed the whole project without a single typo. And then when I live stream, sometimes like I get these type errors or some version of PNPM is not happy with the. Yeah, there's like weird stuff and I get stuck. And again, like going back to the topic of just doing it anyway, I felt sometimes like just stopping the stream and just pretend, oh, I lost my internet, whatever. But now I've gotten comfortable with staying maybe for 45 minutes completely stuck and people in the comments try to help. And it again goes to this natural stuff. I hope I've done a good job with the Astro stuff. Like I haven't checked the rest of the week. They've announced Astro Studio, which is like a managed dashboard where you can create new projects with one click. Like you can select from a template or from Freestarter and it sets it up with the database and everything. I don't know if you know this world, but Laravel has this Forge platform. It's basically, it sits between your project and then your hosting provider. And it's like a provisioning of new projects, and you create a project and it creates a database and blah, blah, blah. And then you connect it to the hosting. And like, it's like a clickety clack interface instead of going SSH into your server hosting provider and doing all the stuff and creating databases manually. Yeah. Astro Studio looks like one thing like this for Astro. It's a paid service, but I guess so is Forge, and there's value. So it's like you give money to have convenience. That's how the most SaaS apps work.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, I guess next stream, although I don't think we're doing next week, but next time we do a stream, let's yeah, we can cover all the other stuff that happens this week because I'm sure there's going to be more exciting astro developments. But I realize we've been going for over an hour. Again,
Yes.
it's just so much fun hanging out and chatting with you. What is do you have any sick picks or anything that you have used recently, bought recently, that you love?
I always forget to think about this. Go
I
ahead
can
if you
jump
have one.
in
Yes.
with the yeah. So on the perfect topic of people chopping down trees all around me, I we recently purchased a it's called a hand pruning saw, and so it's like a chainsaw, but it's a little handheld battery one, and so. The brand of it is Ryobi, but I'm sure there are a bunch for anyone not watching in Australia. Oh, Ryobi is probably
Yeah, it's
maybe an
everywhere.
international brand. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. The Ryobi hand pruning saw is just awesome. We had, I think I talked about this in a recent
Log
uh,
splitter.
episode. Yeah, we got. I've got so many great tree related tools living up in the hills surrounded by
I was
very
gonna say that,
tall
yeah.
trees that drop limbs often.
All your
I
picks are
have
about like smashing down trees and
That's right. We still have a lot of trees around us. We're not intentionally taking down trees. It's
yeah.
when there's a problem and we need to take something down for safety. But this hand pruning saw, we had a bunch um like big branches fall recently, and I thought I'd have to get out the full chainsaw to cut them up. But this hand pruning saw, it's like it can handle like quite large, like cutting quite large branches, and it's just so fast because it's a little battery hand operated thing. And so uh, we kind of, I've got a future pick. Maybe I'll hint at a future pick that we also have a mulcher, and so that can like take like branches and turn them into mulch, which you
The
can then
chips.
put
Yeah.
on, yeah, little wood chips. And so the combination of these two, being able to use a hand pruning saw and just cut off a bit of a branch, and then cut off any of the leafy bits and put those through the mulcher, and then yeah, turn the other stick into either garden edging. We have a bunch of our paths and stuff out in the garden are just made up of like fallen bits of wood all entwined together to create the pathway, which is very cool. Or chop it up for firewood, because also during winter we have like a wood burner. And so, yeah, we recently had this like massive storm where all of this, like, there's just so much debris everywhere, so many trees down. And I feel like, at least around our house, we've been able to like take what is, like, maybe not like a disastrous, maybe like a bit of a strong term, but we've been able to take this negative event and then turn it, like, we've been able to use everything from it. We've been able to mulch all of the green bits and turn it into like nutrients for the other plants and other trees. And then we've been able to chop up any of the smaller sticks to turn into firewood, which we can use to keep warm during winter. And then the rest of the big pieces we've been able to use as garden edging in the garden. And some of the big stumps we're now using as like outdoor play, like obstacle course stuff for the kids. And so we've been able to take this like, negative event and turn it into all of these little positive things. It's very nice. It's a good feeling. So
That's
my
awesome.
recommendation: go and get yourself a hand pruning saw, battery operated. Unless you don't live somewhere with trees, which is probably the majority of people that are listening to this. You probably don't live out in like a rainforest where trees fall around you all the time. But if you have any kind of garden work that you need to do, hand pruning saw, that's where it's at.
Yeah, I can relate so hard because I just moved up the coast to a property with a much bigger land, and I don't yet have the tools, so there's a lot of wasted. I'm listening to your story and I'm jealous because I literally this weekend I filled this green garden bin with lots of branches and stuff that I cleaned up, and I was like, I could turn this into mulch. I could probably do different things, but instead I'm like scratching my arms trying to push it down. And there's another pile that didn't fit the bin because we have one bin per week that's got taken today actually. So now I can fill the next one for next week. My approach to making mulch. So my pick is a Ryobi. I'm gonna shout out Ryobi because I'm very light junior level consumer, but I have started what Wes posted that tweet where there's like 4 different brands, and it's like if you're a dad, you're one of these 4 groups, and one of the like it's like once you buy in the ecosystem, like the batteries and stuff is all like you have to continue going with that one. And I went Ryobi because in Australia, like, I don't know, Bunnings has lots of good deals. So I'm very basic. I have like the lowest power leaf blower and whippersnipper, and then for the lawn mowing I got with a 36 volt instead of 18 because I need a bit more. And so my way of mulching stuff like is putting all the leaves, blowing them in the grass, and then with the lawnmower I go over it and it just like squirts everywhere chips. But it somehow awesome. It kind of keeps the grass. It sucks because when you walk in the grass, you get stuff stuck to your feet and bring in the house. But it actually keeps the grass nice and moistured, and it protects it from being all dry. So yeah, shout out to Ryobi, which I'll probably eventually get a pruning, handheld pruning stuff. And it's as developers working inside, it's really fun to go out and you have to do gardening, and you can turn this from like, oh my God, I hate this, to like, I'm going to let some steam, I'm going to get fit, I'm going to get a bit of sunshine and fresh air, and I might be able to decorate the garden with bits and bobs that I've cut off and build stuff. It's really cool.
Yeah, let's get Ryobi to sponsor the podcast, because I have a whole set of Ryobi tools to talk about as separate sick picks. So we should get them to just
This segment is brought to you by the Log Splitter. We did
just sponsor the sick pick section of the podcast.
As soon as you started with that pick, it took me back to, I think that was the episode with Luke Bennett from ThinkMill, where we talked about Next.js, like conf. We put him on the spot on the morning and say, hey, be a guest and tell what you told in Slack in Livestream. And you sick pick the Log Splitter at the end. And I used to do these fun edits, like the intro highlights, and I think I cut like 6 or 7 times where you say the word Log Splitter and you get so excited. As soon as you started talking about the pruning thing, it took me right back to the Log Splitter edit.
I would say probably the most excited I've been throughout this episode with all the topics that we've talked about. Yeah. The spot where I've been most enthusiastic has been talking about the pruning saw. So maybe we need to spin off a separate podcast that's just garden tools.
With the time of this now, like the Astro launch week and gardening Ryobi is probably, although we spent 20 minutes at the start doing echo-y stuff, and yeah. But I also like, even if we go live every week or try to, like, splitting the episodes in 2 makes it more consumable, and it also has that, like, we more easily have stuff scheduled to release next week instead of, But it means you need to. You don't actually like.
We're not doing that. We'll just put it out. Yeah. We'll put it out when we're available. We won't put it out when we're not available. But speaking of episodes, we did just drop a whole bunch from the archive. Or by the time if you're watching this on YouTube, then probably only one of them has come out. If you're listening to this, then they've all come out. But we have decided, rather than letting all of the episodes that we did record just live in a private archive that no one can ever access again, we decided that we would just put them out with minimal effort. So we would do just chopping the start and the end, and then releasing them. So you may have noticed that like 5 episodes have dropped before this one in very quick succession. We're not planning on doing a podcast every single day.
Yeah, this is the cadence.
That's right. You might notice that like some of the topics that we talk about are quite out of date. So the first one of those was a Next.js episode we did. We actually recorded it just before the app router was released. And so it is, I listened back to it. Surprisingly, the concept of Next.js is obviously the same. But the specifics that we're talking about,
not cutting edge.
Maybe a little bit out of date. Yeah. And Remix as well. It was a little bit different to the current state of Remix. But still, we thought it would be better for people to be able to enjoy those episodes rather than just chucking them in the bin and, wasting that
if someone joins
5 or 6 hours we spend.
They discovered the podcast and like, oh, I know it's out of... I understand going back to the start of the podcast is out of date, but I did that with CSS, with the Shop Talk show. Like I discovered them quite early, but still they were like 100 and a bit episodes deep. And I did the last 3 or 4, and then I was like, oh, I can't wait till next Wednesday when they release. So I went back from number 1 and I listened to almost all of them at like 2 or 3x. And yeah, I was like, obviously what they mention here is like, in today, when you leave today, it sounds a bit like, but you understand what you've done is go back in the archive. And yeah, I think it makes sense for the backlog. And also there will be a day very soon where we can run all our backlog through AI and like make the audio better, there will be a thing that say, hey, would you like me to optimize all of your things? And we'll be like, yes. And yeah. Or even add little show notes saying, oh, this mention is now out of date due to the context switching of the industry or whatever. I think it's good to have everything out for
I agree.
Yeah.
And yeah, for the record, I was taking the stance that we just delete it all and forget it ever happened because it's not up to date and it's not good enough and it'll confuse people that it's not, everything we say isn't perfectly accurate to right now. And Simon was the one that was arguing for just putting it out and not caring that it's not perfect. So good call, Simon. I'm glad that they are now out there. And yeah, we also have, if you head over to navbar.tech/suggestions, we have a place where you can request any topic you want us to cover. So head on over to the site, check out all the awesome work Simon's been doing, building out the Navbar website, and let us know if there are any topics that you would like us to cover. Simon, did you just have something on the screen?
I was waiting to see. I didn't want to cut your nice audio take. I thought that'd be a funny stir and create a comment myself saying how our content is out of date in the backlog.
But it's still Simon and I having great conversations in between some out of date content. And so check it out. Let us know what you think and let us know if you want us to do a refreshed version of any of those. I think it'd be quite valuable to do a refreshed version of the Next.js one. I've been working heaps with the app router, so I have lots of context on that. So I think that'd be a fun episode to do. An updated version of our tech setups, I think, would be a great one to cover. I'd love to hear if there's anything that you've tweaked, especially with moving to more live streaming rather than as many videos. And thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next week.
See you later. Thanks for joining. Bye.